Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves and each other and the world. It is good to see you this morning. Let's take a moment to unmute ourselves so that we can all hear each other, give each other morning greetings. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
I hear you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Great morning today. Melissa.
Good morning.
Barbara.
Okay.
All those happy faces today.
On the other side of the street, all the way down there.
She's not allowing participation.
Then I got a little bit closer, and then finally I
Hello,
was
Alan.
able to park where I am
Morning,
now.
Lisa.
But I wanted to park there so that, you know.
Right?
Let me help you out the door.
Oh,
You can see the order of service by following the link that will appear in the chat. And there are lots of announcements there of upcoming events. I want to call your attention to two things. One, that Discovering UUCPA with me is at 1 o'clock today. If you want to learn more about this congregation and how to get connected, especially in this online world we are in right now, join me at 1. And also coming up this Saturday night is our auction. It's going to be a great party, even though we are not all together in one space. Our planners have done a wonderful job of finding ways for us to get together and, of course, bid on each other's fabulous offerings. So come to the biggest party of the year by following that link, and see you on Saturday night. And now, let us begin our service. We light our chalice this morning with the words of Unitarian Universalist minister Christian Schmidt, a neighbor of ours until recently in Berkeley. This is a call to worship for the joyful, the brokenhearted, the fearful, the exhausted. For whatever you are feeling right now, may this be a place for you to find what you need. You are welcome here in this gathering where we come to feed our souls, heal our hurts, and just be together. For too long now, we have experienced the things that divide us: poverty and oppression, unjust laws and policies, violence and imprisonment. We cannot fix these in a day or even a year, but we can fix them, and we must, because we know that despite divisions, despite the triumphs or defeats of candidates and parties, our destinies, all of them, remain deeply intertwined. Liberation must be for all people if it is truly liberation. As long as one soul suffers needlessly, we cannot rest. As long as our planet screams out in pain, so will all who live on her. So for all the feelings, the emotions, the pains and hurts, the joy and celebration you have in your heart and body and mind today, you are welcome here. Here may you find rest and renewal, partners for the journey, time to contemplate, and energy for action. Let us worship.
With our centering words, we draw upon the many sources of our living tradition. Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Sue Phillips said, "Creating beloved community is messy, gritty, fearsome, and hard. This is a time we have been practicing for. The only response to this moment of extraordinary division is to show ourselves and our communities that another way is possible." The antidote to polarizing fear is love. The antidote to alienating isolation is connection. My friends, we were made for this week, and now we have to actually do it. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, let us become fully centered and present in this place together. Bruce will lead us in singing hymn number 188 in the gray hymnal. We will sing it 3 times.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Did you hear the news? The pharaoh Akhenaten is dead.
And the humans stopped believing that there is only one God.
We can go back to being gods and goddesses again.
The humans need lots of gods and goddesses.
Like me, Khnum, the god who made all living creatures from clay on my potter's wheel.
Like me, Sekhmet, the goddess of war with magic that can help with healing.
Like me, Hathor, the sky goddess who is also a cow.
Like me, Bess, the cheeky god who protects humans from evil.
And me, Aten, god of the sun.
Sorry, Aten, but you've been downgraded.
What do you mean? Downgraded?
They're changing your name to Ray.
They're going to combine you with Amun, the creator god.
But I was just getting used to being the only god.
That's what happens when you're a god. You're important for a while, then the humans forget all about you.
Aten was the only god for maybe 50 years. Then they went back to having lots of gods and goddesses.
And now we've mostly forgotten all those other gods and goddesses.
Some people say Pharaoh Akhenaten was the first Unitarian because he only believed in one god.
I'm not sure I want to claim him as a Unitarian.
Yeah, he doesn't seem very nice.
This story makes me wonder about gods and goddesses.
Me too. Maybe gods and goddesses are just imaginary. Maybe humans have never really understood gods and goddesses.
Maybe there's some truth in all the gods and goddesses.
Maybe gods and goddesses change over time.
And maybe we should never trust someone who thinks they know all there is to know about gods and goddesses.
We now turn our thoughts to the important events of our lives, which we wish this community to share. If you have a joy or sorrow that you would like me to speak this morning, please send your joys and sorrows to joyconcern@uucpa.org or post them in the chat box if you're here on Zoom, and they will be shared aloud. As people are gathering those thoughts, I would like to begin our time of sacred sharing with this Veterans Day prayer from Karen Bellavance Grace, another Unitarian Universalist minister. If the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. Meister Eckhart. Today we have set aside time to publicly say thank you to our siblings who have served in the Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, Navy, and Marines, to say thank you to all who served, whatever their role, wherever their service took them. We say thank you to those whose service was brief and to those who made a career of their service. We say thank you to those who remember their service with fondness and to those whose time in service still haunts them. We say thank you to those who returned to us largely intact, who found jobs, started families, and who continue to find ways to serve their communities. We say thank you to veterans who returned with brokenness so deep that they continue to struggle to find a role or even a home in our communities. God of many names, source of all love, in the face of all this, sometimes the only prayer we have is thank you. We pray it will be enough. Oh, so much in our hearts, sorrows and worries and joys. So let us take a moment of silence to hold them all, to feel our compassion and awareness expanding to this wider community, to our whole country, which is in such turmoil and excitement at this moment, to the world that has watched us and gone on as well with its own concerns, troubles, rejoicings. Let us hold them all. Blessed be. Please join in as Bruce leads us in singing Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
Our reading today is from a Facebook posting of Bruce Olstead. My father and I had a difficult relationship from the time I was a child through his passing in 2011. I don't think either of us ever understood the other. I do know we loved each other, each in the way that was possible for us. But for a time in my adulthood and for a good number of the years since he passed, I was content to remember only the things about him. But now, looking back, I find that there were many truths about life and about living that he tried to show me along the way, for better or worse. And I find myself wanting to hold a more integrated version of him. This has been a difficult time in our nation. Many of us, myself included, have been, are, too willing to not see the things about the other side that are true and positive and connected to our common humanity. This coping mechanism is understandable, but there will come another time when we will have to pick up the threads of a more nuanced view and move forward. There are things that will not be forgivable, nor should they be. Returning to my father, for instance, I cannot even say he never voted against my rights. He absolutely did vote against my rights, and I doubt very much I will ever come to forgiveness on that point. But, and this is very important, I have come to a place of understanding and acceptance about it. I think this is the most we can expect of ourselves. An expectation, yes, but also an obligation we have to each other as individuals and as a nation. May we see it through together. New York columnist Davis Brooks recently said, "We should be humble about generalizing across groups of people, especially people we've never met." Syndicated columnist Mark Shields quipped, "You can't make generalizations about people you do know. You have to make generalizations about people you don't know." Most of us do make generalizations about people unless we catch ourselves. With the heated polarization going on in our country, it's easy for the amygdala part of our brains to get engaged for fighting, especially when we feel threatened. Then we go into our separate tribes, demonizing other groups of people who don't think, feel, or have the same goals as we. I'm a member of UUCPA's Healing the Divide group. Yet I found myself so frustrated by the continued ugliness between our polarized sides and events that triggered my anger that I almost quit several times. Our group also had one big problem. We were in a bubble with only one side of the divide represented. Member Michael Aberson sent an email with a link to Braver Angels in the spring of 2019. Several of us checked out online Zoom events through the Silicon Valley Alliance and the parent organization. Recently, our group gathered with Braver Angels from the opposing side in a living room conversation, which was very productive. I joined Braver Angels in June and made a personal commitment to stay with them, even though I still struggle with frustration and anger triggers. I stay because Braver Angels is truly a group where Republican-leaning voters and Democratic-leaning voters come together and speak to one another respectfully, maintaining the dignity of the other person. There is no agenda, no trying to change the other's mind. After the divisive 2016 election, co-founders David Blankenheim, Bill Doherty, and David Lapp gathered Trump and Clinton supporters in South Lebanon, Ohio, to see if Americans could disagree respectfully and perhaps find common ground. These co-leaders modeled and taught skills of marriage and family counselors so participants could listen, hear, and understand without preparing retorts, and to ask questions to learn without going for gotchas. The workshop went so well that people from opposite sides became close friends, even when they still disagreed with each other. This group decided to take these workshops across the country to depolarize our divided country, so they formed Better Angels, later changed to Braver Angels. Braver Angels was inspired by the words of Abraham Lincoln, who called on Americans to summon the better angels of our nature and find the courage to pursue a more perfect union with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right. Their programs include red blue workshops, skills trainings, debates, and media promotion. Knowing that the 2020 election would be difficult for our country, Braver Angels planned a national event called With Malice Toward None, calling on religious congregations and civic groups to take this to their communities. It's so easy to slip into gloating when one's candidate has won an election, or to feel despondent or rage and seek revenge when one's candidate has lost. With Malice Toward None is designed to anticipate and ward off these reflections. It is designed to comfort and to heal. To learn more about Braver Angels, go to braverangels.org. Now the choir will sing Common Link by Mark Carlson with a text by John F. Kennedy.
Before I begin, and I must apologize, Tim, this is not on your closed captioning information. I want to give thanks to two people, Bruce Olstad, who gave us permission to share his beautiful reflection as our reading, and Barbara Smith Thomas. I have worn this stole before that she made this morning in honor of the suffragists and the amazing accomplishment of a woman of color, Asian and African American, becoming our new vice president. Regardless of your political persuasion, that is an amazing shift for our country. So I wanted to wear white in that tradition. Thanks, Barbara, for making that possible. Weeks before the election, a member of the congregation made a request I could not refuse, that I look at the website of Braver Angels, the organization Mary just told us about, and consider their suggestions. These were to take their pledge and to dedicate the first service after the election to the process of reaching out to those who had wanted a different outcome. The pledge, by the way, you can see at the bottom of your order of service. In congregations more evenly divided than ours, this Sunday, this With Malice Towards None Sunday means having these conversations among their members. Things are harder for them and easier for them. Harder because they had to go into their sacred spaces this weekend knowing that they were giving thanks for the outcome among beloveds who were grieving it, or that they were bringing their grief and despair to their spiritual community as others were singing hallelujah for the same events. And easier because they must face bravely a conflict that more homogenous congregations can pretend is not there. More homogenous congregations can say, that's a problem for another time, another place, one's neighborhood or family gatherings or the op-ed pages, but church is a comfortable place. Well, as you have heard before from this pulpit, church isn't supposed to be comfortable. We celebrate together here, yes. We hold each other's sorrows here. We comfort each other, but we also, with love and respect, challenge each other. And maybe one day after the outcome of the election is too soon for you to accept a challenge. Maybe right now you need to simply be with your response to this election and not engage with others whose response is diametrically different. If so, please just tuck my thoughts away for another time when feelings are not running so high. The pledge taken from Lincoln's inaugural is called With Malice Toward None. Now that in itself seems like a pretty low bar. I mean, malice. Malice is the desire to cause pain, injury, or distress, the intent to cause harm without legal justification or excuse. Okay, I think we can manage without malice. Or on the principle that feelings are amoral and it's only our actions that we must govern, we may even feel a rush of desire to cause our political opposites distress, as long as we don't act on it. I know that not even Lincoln was such an angel in his powerful second inaugural address, which I encourage you to read. It is only 6 paragraphs long, a masterpiece of writing and statesmanship. For the most part, his speech is a call for healing, even as the war rages on. But there is one line that is a tour de force of passive aggression. Both read the same Bible and pray to the same God, and each invokes his aid against the other. It may seem strange that any men should dare to ask a just God's assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of other men's faces, but let us judge not, that we be not judged. I believe my Generation Z child would say at this moment, burn. So let us strive to set aside our snark and ask in all sincerity the question, how do we move forward as a country? I think we can agree that we have not done so very effectively in the last 4 divided years. Can we do better? Can we do better? And what does moving forward together even mean? Well, here are some things it does not mean in my book. It does not mean agreeing on everything. Dissent and disagreement are part of any serious political conversation, and no country can keep progressing without them. It does not mean compromising on everything. Politics is the art of compromise, but each of us may have, I hope we do have, some non-negotiable items. Moving forward together does not mean ceasing the struggle for justice. We keep working for what we believe to be right. It does not mean refraining from opposing our neighbor's wishes. Following our consciences means that we may be working toward different aims. That is good and proper. It does not mean accommodating our opponents so much that we cause harm to the oppressed, nor pressuring the oppressed to tolerate yet more harm from a country that has devalued them for so long. It does not mean denying the harm that has been done. We must acknowledge that the decisions that lie before us are sometimes life or death. People on different parts of the political spectrum would say life and death for children in cages, for transgender people whose very existence is questioned, for babies still forming in utero, for those particularly at risk from police violence, like people with disabilities, Native Americans, African Americans, for people at risk of COVID who are threatened, depending on your view, either from the insistence on wearing masks and keeping our distance or from the refusal to. So if the stakes are so high and moving together does not mean setting aside these life and death concerns, what does it mean? What is the aim of Braver Angels? In my own words, I would say it means listening. It means asking genuine questions rather than assuming what people believe or lecturing them on what they must believe. It means treating one another with dignity and respect. And please note that respect here is an action, not a feeling. We need not respect someone's beliefs in order to treat the person respectfully. Moving forward means speaking for ourselves, not for anyone else. And it means asking our conversation partners to speak for themselves and not concluding that they speak for all evangelicals, all Black people, all Trump voters, etc. It means unbundling the convictions that we imagine are all one package and acknowledging that they might not always go together. Bible-believing Christian does not equal narrow-minded, does not equal anti-gay, does not equal authoritarian parent, does not equal disregarder of facts, does not equal Republican. Atheist does not equal narrow-minded, does not equal permissive parent, does not equal anti-abortion, does not equal rule breaker, does not equal disregarder of facts, does not equal Democrat. It's a tightrope walk, all right. As David Blankenhorn, one of the founders of Braver Angels, wrote on Election Day, most voters in both parties believe that America is seriously threatened by bad actors. Most of us even view this risk as close to existential. If the wrong side wins the election, quote, America will not recover. In such dire circumstances, should I compromise with what I view as an ultimate danger? Should I seek to reach understandings and split differences with those who would cripple, perhaps permanently, the America I know and love? Surely, Blankenhorn says, a plausible and morally defensible answer to these questions is no. In fact, we see this no all around us today. A progressive friend tells me that as an African American, he has no interest in seeking common ground with people whose views threaten his life. A conservative friend tells me that it's worse than pointless to seek accommodations with people who would take away basic American freedoms. In one of Samuel Beckett's works, the character says, I can't go on. I will go on. Can both things even be possible? Blankenhorn asks. I don't know how we do it either, but I know why we must. We can narrow our circle of friends to those we agree with. We can subtly or not so subtly let political opponents know that they don't belong in our congregations. We can refuse to talk to Uncle Harold. We can even talk about seceding or urging other states to. But where does this all lead in the end? We are here. Together, we share a country. And if we no longer shared a country, we would share a planet. Look at the countries that have chosen division and see how that has worked out. Maybe for some it has, but for others, they've ended up as the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, each sunk in its bunker, firing at the other for decades. As India and Pakistan, as Israel and the Palestinian territories. Our opponents don't go away just because we stop trying to talk to them. And where do radical solutions leave the minority that's left in the new split land? My sister in New Orleans says Louisiana needs states like California helping to push the country in another direction. No doubt many conservative Californians would make the same argument against the former Confederate states. Please stay. Our fates are intertwined. And against all odds, we decided to form one nation, one government. After a civil war ripped it apart, we knitted it back together sloppily and without sufficient regard for justice or peace. But we tried. We're trying. As Blankenhorn says, democracy is government by talk. The goal is to keep the conversation going, even when doing so seems pointless, too painful to bear, or likely to produce outcomes that many view as intolerable. Alternatives to government by talk do exist, but none are democratic alternatives. Can we hold that, just that, as the goal to keep the conversation going? Not to convince each other, not even to understand each other, but simply, in the words of the Braver Angels Pledge, to seek to understand others' concerns and aspirations. For that, we must be in conversation, speaking honestly and listening open-heartedly. I've spoken before of my deeply conservative friend, A. I'm sorry to say she really is the only one, the only good friend I have who has a radically different political view to mine. I think this is a failing on my part, but there it is, and we start where we are. I knew that signing this pledge and writing this sermon were not the hard part for me. The hard part is the conversation. The conversation I was afraid to have was with A. So I wrote to her, sharing the Braver Angels Guide to One-on-One Red-Blue Conversations and proposing that we have them by email, phone, or Zoom, as she chooses, since we live many hundreds of miles apart. They're quite structured, which may seem stilted for people who have known each other for years, but they guide the participants through a difficult conversation. After all, none of our political conversations, hers and mine, have shed much light on each other's concerns and aspirations in all those years. They've generated a lot of heat, but not much light. So we could use the guidance. Braver Angels sets up these conversations with, these conversations between strangers. And that would be fascinating too. But I wanted to start with my friend, for us to ask each other questions such as these and listen without crosstalk to the answers. What life experiences have influenced your values and beliefs about politics and public policy? Why do you think your side's values and policies are good for the country? What are your reservations or concerns about your own side? What did you learn about the other person's political perspective? And did you see anything in common? So we're going to give it a try. This is the Braver Angels Pledge. Regardless of how the election turns out, I will not hold hate, disdain, or ridicule for those who voted differently from me. Whether I am pleased or upset about the outcome, I will seek to understand the concerns and aspirations of those who voted differently and will look for opportunities to work with people with whom I disagree. I urge you to consider this pledge, wrestle with it, and whether or not you can sign on to every word in it to seek out those opportunities. Let me leave you with one little example of how. When Mary and I went to the with Malice Toward None orientation, online of course, I was multitasking. As I watched the Zoom orientation, I had my cell phone in my hand and I was sending texts to voters in voter suppression states. Sending the initial text doesn't take any brain power. It's just pushing send hundreds of times. I did it hundreds of times in the course of that orientation. I was working as hard as I could for the victory of the candidate I thought was right for our country. It felt like just the right balance that Lincoln urged upon us. On the one hand, to carry on our struggle for justice with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, as he said. To act upon our convictions as we are guided by conscience. And at the same time, precisely the same time, to seek to engage with those whose consciences pit them against us. To passionately strive for the right as we see it while staying in the conversation with those who see it otherwise, treating them as people with dignity and worth. We can't go on. We'll go on. So may it be. As a part of the Free Church tradition, we accept no money from any governmental body, nor do we receive money from any ecclesiastical authority in order that we shall remain free to govern ourselves. In addition to their annual pledges, each week our members and friends may choose to give an additional contribution as a public witness that we are and shall remain a free church. With our offering, we also assert that we are part of the interdependent web of existence. 1 week per month, your gift goes to the chosen community organization, which this month is American Muslim Voice. Today, our offering goes to UUCPA. The order of service gives a QR code and link and also information on using text to give via Give Lively. Please give generously. If you're visiting for the first time, you're our guest. Please just enjoy the music. Thank you. Now, please join in as Bruce leads us in singing Break Not the Circle.
Break not the circle of enabling love, where people grow forgiven and forgiving. Break not that circle, make it wider still, till it includes, embraces all the living. Come wonder at this love that comes to life, where words of freedom are with humor spoken, and people keep no score of wrong and guilt, but will that human bonds remain unbroken. Join then the movement of the love that frees, till people of whatever race or nation will truly be themselves, stand on their feet, see eye to eye with laughter and elation.
It is a high aspiration, but we begin. We begin today, we begin over and over. In every community, There is work to be done. In every nation, there are wounds to heal. In every heart, there is the power to do it. Thank you, Veronica. And thank you to all our wonderful musicians and contributors today. Everyone, please stay after our benediction for our virtual coffee time. You'll be invited to small group conversations in our breakout rooms, or you can stay here in the main room with me, Mary and me, to discuss the service. Just don't take the invitation to a breakout room and you'll stay with us. The rooms will stay open for half an hour. Now, will you please unmute yourself and turn on your video? I'll give you a few seconds to do that before we begin saying our benediction together. Go out into
the world in peace.
Give the world in
Good courage.
Give her
Hold fast to what is good. Return no evil for evil. Faint-hearted. Weak for suffering. Rejoice in beauty. Keep love. Honor all beings.
Honor all beings.
Amen.
Thank you.